Well-known scientist Albert Einstein faced imposter syndrome.
Yeah. You just can't
That's
let it
crazy.
hold you back.
Hey, babes.
I'm Madeline.
And I'm Deja.
And welcome back to the Elegance Exchange. So today we're gonna talk about something that I think is super important and that a lot of people feel, especially women.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about imposter syndrome and kind of what comes along with it, how to identify that you have imposter syndrome, and then some people who have had it and how to fix it. All right, so imposter syndrome was originally kind of identified, I guess, when women started getting PhDs. So women would, they'd get these PhDs and then they'd constantly feel like they were just faking it or they simply got it because they blended it in. They didn't really deserve it. They were just faking it.
Like that self-doubt where you don't feel like you deserve it, if anything.
And I don't think they felt like they were intelligent enough for this degree. Because during this time period, it was so normalized that women wouldn't get degrees. They would stay home with the kids. And so this is kind of where imposter syndrome was identified. I'm sure it, came way before then. But it was started to, I don't know, become widely known.
Yeah, there you go.
So this kind of created the narrative that women didn't feel like they belonged in high up positions. And, that creates an issue, right?
Exactly.
So how do we identify that we have imposter syndrome? Have you ever felt it?
Oh, no, most definitely. Because, I feel like everyone gets to a point in their life where they try something new, they work towards their goal, and then they finally get to a spot where they want to be. But then you look back on it and you're, almost comparing yourself to other people, and you're you kind of feel like you don't belong there, if anything. You kind of self-doubt all of your hard work. You kind of forget about everything that you sacrificed getting to that point, and you just start to compare yourself to other people. And that's whenever you start to really doubt yourself, if anything.
And I mean, I think we feel imposter syndrome probably every time we upload.
Right? Everyone feels imposter syndrome at some point.
And, you just have to go about it. But here are some, key identifying factors that maybe you are facing imposter syndrome. And I am going to read this off of a list. That way I don't get anything wrong. So basically, you always overwork because of fear. So say you are taking a class, okay? So maybe it's like calculus or maybe it's, chemistry or something. And you feel like you are not smart enough for it. You are going to constantly overwork. You're going to constantly study, constantly, cram stuff for a test because you feel like you're going to fail even though you know that you've studied and that you're smart enough.
Especially, that's a big thing too, especially when you make it into that class. You are in that class for a reason. You already did all the prereqs getting into that class, and they wouldn't have accepted you in that class in the first place if you weren't
smart enough
for it. So people do tend to just want to study because they doubt themselves and they're like, well, I'm not going to pass this class.
Exactly. Or say, you have a presentation in class or a dissertation if, you're going for a higher degree. You most likely are going to know more about that subject than anybody in the class, but yet you spend so much time preparing for it and practicing because you don't feel like you fit in. You don't feel like you belong.
Yeah.
So that is something to really identify. Do you do this? Because if you do, that's one step of having imposter syndrome. So then, maybe you take that test or you do that dissertation or you do that speech and you feel really good about it.
Right.
But then you start talking in your head and you start comparing yourself and you're like, oh, well,
maybe I didn't do so good on that.
That fear comes creeping back in. And that's not a good feeling.
No, it's not. Especially when you know how much time and effort you put into studying for it.
Exactly.
You can't be doubting yourself. If you know you studied up until this point, you did everything you could, then why are you going to look back at it and start thinking I could have done something different?
Or thinking that you're not good enough, There's also that narrative of faking it till you make it, okay? And, for a long time, I had this mindset. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to pretend that I deserve this, that I fit in, that I did everything possible, And the truth is, you don't need to fake it because you already made it.
Exactly.
right? If you're in that calculus class, you already made it in that calc class because you're smart.
So why are you exactly? So then why are you gonna keep faking the rest of the way there?
Right. Or, like we might feel like we don't belong in the podcast space just because we don't have a lot of followers. But guess what? We're filming podcasts. We do have some followers. We deserve to be in it just as much as anybody else.
Exactly. You put in the work, you put in the effort, you put in the
Yeah.
time, you're gonna get the result.
Get rid of that, like, fake it till you make it. Because you already made it.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing, you dismiss compliments. I think a lot of people do that. I, for one, am really bad at that. But you dismiss compliments. So say somebody is like, oh my gosh, like you got 100 on your math test. That's so good. Like you're so smart.
And then you're like, no, not really. Like I just,
Yeah, like it was just luck. I didn't deserve that. No, you do.
No, and you need to stop degrading yourself too, because whenever you
Absolutely.
act like that, you're just degrading yourself, and you're just like
You're feeding into that imposter syndrome.
exactly, and like that negative mindset too. And, like the more you tell yourself that, the more you're gonna start to believe it, and you're gonna be like, well, that was just luck, or that was just a really easy test, or
Yeah. And for my woman out there, typically what we do is we often run towards our fears.
Mhm.
So, say we really are terrified that we are going to end up broke and alone. Okay, when we're older. I know. Sounds very harsh.
It's a
But
pretty scary reality though.
say that's your fear. You are going to chase your fear. So what I mean by that is you are going to take a really hard degree course, or you are going to get a really, well-paying corporate job, and then maybe you go on dates all the time. Even though you don't like it, you're going to do that because you're terrified that you're going to end up broken alone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whereas men often, go for mastery, but they limit themselves.
Yeah, they don't take the risk, they don't take the sacrifices to really go up there,
Right. So what they will do is, maybe they'll get a job that they know that they're completely competent in, they know they're really good at it, and that they can do it easily, almost too easily.
Yeah.
And so they stay in this job because they know that they are a master at it. But maybe it doesn't make as much as they want, or maybe they don't get connections like they would in a job that's a little bit higher up. That is the definition of, being a master at something, but not chasing what you want.
Exactly. Like not reaching out. Like you're already a master at it, but you're still not seeking that improvement, and you're not wanting to take risks to even get even further with all those skills.
Exactly. And, I was listening to a TED Talk on this a few days ago, and it was talking about how oftentimes imposter syndrome comes from trauma. Whether it's in your childhood, whether it's from a coach or a teacher in high school or elementary school or whatever, a lot of times the syndrome comes from trauma.
Yeah.
And so you almost need to look back and reflect on, okay, what caused this? Why do I feel this way?
Exactly. Like what was said to me for me to actually start doubting
Who
myself and
exactly.
the things I can do.
Yeah. And I mean, most of the time, whenever you get this, it's because you are not getting any praise. You are not getting any help with anything that you're doing. Basically, you have extremely high expectations that are thrown on you, and maybe you got a new position or you got, upgraded, I guess, and you got thrown into it. But then all of these expectations are put on your shoulders. You don't know what to do. You don't get praised. You constantly get, kind of like discouraged because you don't know what to do. You were thrown in that position. You deserve to be there. It's just the trauma is coming back to haunt you.
Yeah. It's like that saying where people only compliment you when you win, but they don't compliment you throughout your progress. So whenever you don't get complimented by people, whenever you do make it up there, you're kind of just like, well, I did this all for nothing. What did I even do this for? And it's just because you're trying to find that constant validation from other people.
Exactly. And, a lot of famous people feel this way. Okay. So there are reports that, Robert Pattinson, the guy who plays, Edward in Twilight, I think?
Mm-hmm.
He felt imposter syndrome, and he's a well-known actor today, just like Emma Watson, Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, she's everywhere, too.
She's literally an icon. And then something that I found really interesting was Albert Einstein.
Isn't that crazy?
One
Like
of
one of
the
our
smartest men in
like
the entire world.
the biggest scientist, most well-known scientist, Albert Einstein, faced imposter syndrome.
Yeah. You just can't
That's
let it
crazy.
hold you back.
Mm-mm.
Because if these people let them, like, you know, let it hold them back, they wouldn't be who they are today. They wouldn't be well known. They wouldn't be famous.
I know, like if those people started doubting themselves, and along with all these other people, all these other successful people, if they all started doubting themselves the way that other people do now, they would never have gotten there.
Exactly. So don't, you know, force yourself to hide because you feel like an imposter. Because you're not. You deserve to be there just as much as everybody else as long as you put in the work.
You know how much work you put in. You know how much effort, how much time, things you sacrificed. You know, up until
Exactly.
now, everything has shown that you deserve where you're supposed to be. So why are you gonna give up? And why are you gonna give up now just because you feel like
Yeah.
everyone else is all of a sudden better than you?
And there's always going to be somebody who's actually better than you. And that's something that you just have to kind of live with. You know, there's always going to be somebody who's better than you. And there's always going to be somebody that's worse than you. You know, you just kind of have to be okay with being in that in between.
And if there is someone that's better than you, you can't look at them and be like, oh, I wish them nothing but the worst. That should have been me.
No.
You need to look at them, and honestly, you need to use those as an example. Like, that should be
Exactly.
your motivation, if anything, to get better and be like, okay, I want to be like them. Like, I want people to look at me and think that I'm the best one.
Right. So, yeah, just kind of take that into account whenever you're feeling imposter syndrome. Know that everybody feels it, even successful people, and that you deserve to be there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, with that being said, we do have a bunch of social media accounts. Let's see, what?
We're on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We're working on something for our Apple,
Music.
but
But
we're on
yeah.
our pretty popular ones.
Exactly. So definitely go follow us there. And then if you like this episode or like anything we said, you know, definitely leave a like, leave a comment.
Leave us a review on things that you'd want to like
Yeah.
talk about in the future, or things that you're struggling with as well.
Exactly. We genuinely, like, our favorite thing is whenever we get a new comment and we read it and we're like, oh, you know, like, it's amazing. It makes it
is.
all worth it. So yeah. All right. With that, we love you, babes.
Bye.